I assumed everybody would understand that I was joking.
Well, that's the thing. I think somebody else said S2000. I'm like, no. And then somebody else said,
I knew
like,
it wasn't, but
I'm like, okay, I need new friends because nobody can get this. But people have gotten close. Somebody, I think.
Well, if I really sat and listened to it probably for 10 minutes and over again, I could probably get pretty close to what it is. But the problem is that certain, let's say like 80s, 90s Ferraris will sound the same. A 2006 Lamborghini Murcielago will sound the same.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're a little bit all over the map.
3 guesses. Go.
Italian?
No.
Wow. Well, then I have no idea. I'm just going to get out of the car business. Don't worry about it.
I retired today.
It's not a GT3, is it?
No.
No?
God, no.
Wow, really?
No.
I didn't think so. And it's not Italian.
No. It's loud.
Are you sure it's not Italian? Or are you just
sure it's
okay,
not Italian.
German?
Yes.
Wow, really? And it's not a 911? No, it can't be 911. No, it's a Carrera GT.
There it is.
Yeah. See what I mean, though? That V10 could be a late 2000s
Yes.
V12.
Yes.
It could, no, that
But you know what?
sense.
It was surprising because a lot of people guessed LFA.
Excellent guess.
Yeah.
Super cool. Very underrated car.
Yep.
Very underrated
But
car.
I feel like they're still going to keep shooting up in price.
They haven't ever been cheap.
No.
They
When they came out, they kind of fell off the map when people were like, it's almost like a shitty transmission.
I don't know if it so much fell off the map as much as they only made, I think, 375 cars. They sold
Something like that, yeah.
all of them. Every single one of those guys had 25 or 30 other cars, so no one cared whether or not it lived in their collection or got driven. For 2 years, they came out and nobody ever saw one. I saw one when they first came out because I was working the auto show circuit for Lexus and Toyota.
Yeah,
so that was super
there.
cool.
I saw one in person and it was just like, oh.
So I saw one at a couple different auto shows. Yeah. I saw one driving around in real life.
Really? I've never seen one in real life.
In Vancouver. Just out and about, cruising around. Could not have been 22, 23-year-old Asian female driving around in this thing, wheeling it like she had like professional training in this car. Like no nerves, no
That's
sitting
gangster.
in I was shocked. I was just like, this is interesting just to see. More so like forget about the fact that it's a super rare, expensive, probably not an easy car to drive, probably not easy car to even get a hold of. Who knows if it was hers? Who knows if it was somebody in the family, or maybe it is hers. I mean, there's a lot of money in Vancouver, so there's no question it very well could have been. It was a beautiful spec.
But it's crazy to actually see one in real life. I actually haven't. I've been to Toronto. I've States as well.
Mm-hmm. That was the first one I've seen in real life. The second time I saw one in real life was a couple of years ago when the Acura NSX came out. I was invited to a test drive function to go drive the new NSX. And a guy that was there test driving the new NSX showed up in an LFA. And then I subsequently learned that he had an LFA, not maybe 5 cars, like an LFA, I want to say like a Ferrari 458, a McLaren 650.
All the right cars.
Like pretty cool stuff, but he didn't have a 50 car collection. And relatively younger guy too. I don't think maybe 40, like early 40s. Really cool stuff. Wow. And legit guy. Walked over, opened it, like saw me kind of, creep in the car and comes over and goes, "Hey, do you want to have a look?" Open the door, let me sit in it, fire it up. And I was like, oh my God, what a weapon. Like
But he didn't take you out in it?
It was pretty cool outside. And he was like, he offered, and I was like, you know what? I think we'll just wait. I'm like, this is pretty cool. I'm like, because he was just like, well, have you ever been in one of these? I'm like, I've seen it. I sat in one. I had a chance to fire one up at the auto show. But driving it around on the carpet inside the Rogers Center was not exactly the same. Moving around, like it was neat, but people at the auto show, if you ever seen one of those go up and down, they're not car people. They're the people working for the brand. Some of them are. A lot of them are sales guys that have a Saturday off and they come in and just
try and get some customers. Yeah.
And listen, I'd probably do the same thing if I were them.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I worked my first auto show this year, and it was kind of like it was.
I don't know
if
you
was
told me that or not. So it would have been 2019 or 20.
20. Yeah.
What auto show?
It was this year. It was the.
Oh,
Canadian.
that's right. Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
I forgot.
It was actually this year. Like
I remember
pre-COVID. I think it was just before they like locked everyone down.
I actually did as well for the Autostrada booth for the magazine guys.
Yes.
Shout out to the Autostrada forum, who have been incredible supporters since the beginning of my business.
There you go.
Who invited me down there just to come and see the cars, and I said, you know what, I'm going to take a day off and go help. I'm like, I put on my Autostrada t-shirt and went and hung out.
Oh, sweet.
Doing the same thing, I thought I'd never get to see as a child because I grew up going to the Toronto Auto Show. So now I'm on the other side of the rope, inviting guys in, going, "Hey, come on in, have a look. Have you ever
Literally
seen
that? Literally
an
that.
Enzo up close? Cool, come on in. Come
And
have
it's
a look."
not that big of a deal, but I'm assuming to us it's a big
It's
deal
a huge
because
deal.
you used to go there with your family, and
It's
you're
a
like,
huge
"Oh,
deal now.
God,
Still,
look at this. Look at this. And
It's
then,
a huge deal. Not to mention that display. Those guys knock it out of the park every year, and every year they end up with bigger, better, cooler,
Of course.
rarer cars. But stuff like that, where you see any one of them around, is already awesome.
What do they have? Because I was at the McLaren booth. I was working for McLaren that day.
They had like a Jaguar XJ220, a Lancia Stratos, a Lamborghini Miura, a Lamborghini.
That was their booth.
Aventador
Okay.
SVJ, like just all the coolest stuff you ever see on Instagram. They had one of each.
Yeah.
And whether it was old guy stuff, new guy stuff, Italian, German, whatever it was,
Now,
local-
were you working there all day?
Yeah, I was I think the second Saturday, so I ended up there for the day, just hanging out.
Did you
doing
get
this.
any smart ass guys coming up to you?
The odd guy, but to be very honest, most people kind of went through the display or looked at it and go, "Oh my god, there's so much money in this display."
Yeah.
Like, there's just no. What I did enjoy, I'll be very honest, is not so much the smart ass guys, because you get a few of those, but the odd guy that kind of was a wise ass but had a little kid with him, I would typically invite into the booth and say, "Hey, come on in, have a look." Like, that
Because
really,
you remember
that takes
yourself.
their guard down, and they go from smart ass to really appreciative to, hey, when do you ever get an opportunity to walk around any one of these cars, let alone all 10 of them all at once, and all open the door, have a look. Not so much that they're playing with and touching the cars, but the owners were kind enough to let them put these things on display. When was the last time you saw a Ferrari Enzo within 50 feet, let alone open the door and have a look? Smell it inside. See what it looks like.
I did the same thing to a kid in 600 LT.
Yeah.
And because I'm thinking, like, putting myself in those shoes back when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine someone inviting you in saying, "Hey, this is closed for everybody but you"?
Yeah,
Come
absolutely.
on in. Right?
And guess what? Like, on that side of the rope, I'm an absolute nobody. I just wanted to go and have a look and say hi to people. I remember my little brother and I getting invited into the Ferrari booth, probably 2004 or 5, whatever, maybe, when the F430 was like the new cool thing. My little brother, who's 7 years younger than I am, who's staring at the booth, talking to the guy, kind of rhyming off facts about the car. And the guy's like, "Man, you guys really know your cars. Like, why don't you come on in?" And we were, my brother was super techie, super cool, has a little camera, he's taking photos. And the guy invited us in behind the rope and let him sit in the car and let him play with it. And I was like, wow, that was pretty neat for just two kids, walking around. My mother was out somewhere, probably having a coffee or doing whatever else, just letting us do our thing. She was kind enough to take us every year. So it was super cool.
I had a guy, the wise ass guys that I mentioned. I had a guy come in and stare at like a 600 LT with it was like a paint fade, like it was dark blue on one side,
and ends up light blue at the end of the car.
Yes, it was like a $60,000 option. Insane. And he was like, "Why would I ever spend $500,000-$600,000 on this when I can get a Corvette C8 that'll beat this, knock it out of the park, blah blah blah." I just wanted to argue, just
looking to instigate,
0 to 60
because he's read Motor Trend 48
Yes.
times before he got up that morning, just to come and argue with you. And saw your handsome beard and thought, you know what? I'm going to try and put this guy in his place.
Yeah, nod, say yes, and just walk away. Yeah, okay, you're right, sir.
Absolutely.
You're right. The Corvette is better.
We'll see you at the GM
Walk
stand.
away.
You know what? And listen, I love Corvettes too. But
I do as well.
It's not so much that's kind of what I try to do my best to cater to in my business. Yes, I enjoy giving somebody back a spotless car, or selling them a car, or buying a car, whatever the case may be.
What is it that you do?
But
We should touch on that as well.
I will. So the way I built my business, be it from automotive detailing, which is where I started, given my background and kind of getting to hang out in that corner of the automotive sector of, exotic cars, muscle cars, and what I call specialty vehicles of any price range, not just because it's an expensive car, but what I learned and what I heard somebody tell me the other day actually was that we are procuring happiness. Everybody coming through the door
That's good.
is there because they're in a good mood, whether it's to drop off a filthy car and pick up a clean one, sell me their pre-owned car because they're now buying something else, or come in to buy something completely different that they never thought about until 15 minutes ago when I sent them a DM and said, "Hey,
That's really good. Yeah,
I know you were thinking about one of these 6 months ago. Remember me?
Yeah.
You might have missed out on that one, but I have 2 more of these. I know the last one was red. This one's black. How do you feel about this? And a lot of people don't know what they don't know. They come in and they no, it's got to be red. It's got to be yellow.
true.
And suddenly they look at it and they go, "Oh my God, the black is beautiful. I need it. how have I survived without this car for the last 10 years of my life?
Yeah, I wanted red, and I ended up going with yellow, and I'm so
And how happy are you?
Oh,
And
because
doesn't
it's
that,
actually metallic, and there's not enough of them around, and it's, yeah, happy.
when you see a bunch of them in a Honda meet, it's one thing. But when you're out driving, when do you ever see an S2000 in the real world?
That's fully unmolested stock.
Of any kind. I see the odd car. You're right. The odd modded car kind of thing. Maybe at car shows, or maybe guys that are more in the scene, let's say. But legitimate, just plain Jane enthusiast cars like yours,
No, it's hard to find.
not stuff that you see all over the place. And when you do, they're at events or shows or garages, Honda dealerships, or places like mine getting detailed and whatever
But
else.
it's the dream car, right? And you picture your dream car being the exact color you want. Like, not my dream car. My dream car is my poster car, which is the F40, right? In red. But thinking like, oh, what if it was in yellow? And then now I'm having those thoughts. I'm like, oh, unattainable dream car.
But first of all, you never say never. And second,
never say never.
10 years ago, you probably didn't think you'd have your own S2000, nor would it be as nice as the one you've got.
No.
Well, and tastes change. 2 years from now, you might go, you know what? I've had my fun with it. I've enjoyed it. I've got to be the custodian for this car and own it and take care of it and be a part of this car's history. Now it's moving on to its next owner, who's hopefully going to do as much as I did with it to love it. And I'm going to take that and move it on.
Yeah. But
And
what's
move it-
next, though? Because
Don't worry about it.
I think that after experiencing all the number of cars that I've experienced in like the last 8 years, I find that the key to I mean, again, personal preference, but I find that the key is not to buy a fast car. I find that the key is to buy a car that feels fast.
I
And that's a
don't.
big one.
I definitely disagree. Or excuse me, I agree with you. The way I look for
To a certain extent. I know.
for it really depends on what the car is going to, what purpose it's going to serve for you.
A toy, fun, pleasure,
Yeah.
you know, Sunday drive. Like I remember taking Caitlin out, and for the first time when I took her out and I started driving, and that's just before we got out on the main road, and it's a 50 zone in our area, rural area.
For all intent purposes, it's just a car at that point.
Right, but I'm driving her, and she's like, babe, slow down. And I'm like, I'm doing 40. And she's thinking, oh, I thought you were doing like 70. I'm like,
Yeah.
No. But it feels, even at a low speed, it feels fast, right? So it's not until you actually pull up to like, as unfortunate as it is, like a Mazda Speed 3,
Yeah.
and then it starts pulling on you, you're just like, oh, I need more power.
But let me tell you something about
On a
that
corner,
Mazda Speed 3. 10 years from now, he's going to understand what an S2000 is.
Oh, yeah.
And 10 years from then, he's going to understand what a Z06 Corvette is.
Yeah.
All that stuff takes time.
If it's an enthusiast, but yes.
Because when I first started working in my first legitimate job when I was 16, the dealership I worked for specialized in pre-owned Corvettes, pre-owned Dodge Vipers, Harley Davidsons, and then specialty cars, exotic sports cars, and so on.
So majority American.
A lot of the guys were, toy car kind of guys. If it didn't have a big block, we didn't care about it. I was the one who came in with, oh my God, have you guys seen this Audi 5000 Quattro? This is super cool. And those guys were like, what are you talking about? So we had some really cool cars that completely flew under the radar because those guys just didn't care about it. Not that they didn't care. We were a dealership. We were there to sell cars. But I distinctly remember we had 2 of only 45 built Canadian spec, European spec, 94 BMW M3s, both Dakar yellow.
94, so that's an E36.
E36
the
M3.
lightweight.
The lightweight was the white car with the red, purple, blue livery on it.
And this is a Eurospec?
This is a Eurospec Canadian market only. The US did not get these. There was only 45 cars built. And of those entire 45 cars, we had 2 of them at the same time. And this was like 2002. So it wasn't a particularly old car, 6-8 years old. And they each had a little plaque in it saying car number 19 out of 45 or 32 out of 45. These guys looked at this car like, yeah, if you got to go fill them up with gas, go ahead. Like, it doesn't have a big block. We don't care. It's not a Corvette. Why would you buy a BMW in yellow?
Wait, how old are you at this point?
16, 17. I was a child. I was, and
Just a fetus driving a super, super rare.
yeah. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth driving stuff like this, which is, I think, where I have garnered that reputation because I spent a lot of time in my very early youth driving some extremely fast cars that nobody in their right mind should have given to a 17 or 18-year-old kid.
What other car? I gotta hear more because if that's
I will get into that. But the reason I ended up learning that was because the owner of that company, who is a near and dear friend of the family, which is the reason I got that job, I had a lot of respect for. And I thought, no matter whether it was a sales guy or one of the other detail guys, however I ended up in the seat of that car, my ultimate, thought in the back of my mind was, well, I can't disappoint Uncle Nick. He was the one that gave me this position, gave me this job when he really didn't need to hire me, but took one look at me with my resume shaking in my hand and said, yeah, you're going to be part of the detail department. No interview, no phone call, nothing. Just we're going to take you and give you to Billy, who was the detailer at the time.
Yeah.
And you're going to go under his wing, and you're going to learn how to wash cars, and you're going to learn how to, not do drugs and not be a degenerate on the side of the road. At 16 years, it was the day after my 16th birthday.
Wow.
So I just gotten my G1, and I was learning. So I had another 8 months ahead of me before I could take these cars on the road by myself.
Right.
But day one was a Friday. Day two, Saturday. Cool. We're working on Corvettes, Vipers. We had 2 Ferraris in the showroom, and that was back in the day when there was no Instagram. There was no Facebook. I think it was
word of mouth.
2004 maybe. So seeing a Ferrari out on the road was like, oh my God, you go home and call your buddy and be like, oh my God, did you see this car down the road?
And then you got to explain it to him.
Yeah.
The color, the
and
condition.
if he doesn't care, he's just like, yeah, whatever. But seeing an expensive car, not even expensive, but seeing a rare car going up and down the road was a unique experience. It was a big deal.
Wow.
I remember, remember like it was yesterday. I was probably 7 or 8 years old here in Kitchener over on, I think, Confederation Drive or Strathcona, somewhere out by Canadian Martyrs Catholic School, like Mackenzie King, Canadian Martyrs, that neighborhood. Walking with my parents, because we lived in the neighborhood there, going for a walk and seeing a guy roll up to a stop sign in a black Lamborghini Countach with gold wheels on it and this huge wing. This was like mid-90s. So it wasn't an old car. And again, stuff like this you only ever saw in downtown Toronto or at the auto show. Stuff that you just didn't see out in public, let alone in the middle of this small neighborhood in Kitchener, this guy in a Countach, and the thing might as well have been a spaceship. Like, it was such a weird, unique, loud screamer.
Black
Countach, gold phone dial wheels, huge wing, screaming like car idles at 3,000 RPM, like just a wild machine. And the guy just pulled up to a stop sign.
Did you see the guy?
No, the black tinted windows, like just as if the car was a Honda Civic. Like he didn't drive it or treat it like a maniac. He pulled up to a stop sign, put his signal on, and just cruised down the road. But it was such a event. It was like, oh my God, I ran home, told my buddies about it. And a few of my friends at the time were in other families that were all kind of in the car business too. So everybody was super excited about it. And, oh my God, you saw it. I never saw it again.
I wonder if it's the same guy, because there's a guy in the West Heights area. I used to live on a street called Driftwood Place, corner of Driftwood and Driftwood Place. It was like a bluish house. That was our first home after going in and out of apartments. Long story short, there's
welcome to every Serbian childhood. We did the same thing.
Yeah, we grew up on this one of the.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
But there's a guy who's a real estate agent, right? And divorced, doesn't matter. So he sometimes visits his ex-wife to like see the kids and whatnot. He'll pull up in one of 2 cars, a Hummer H1 or a black Countach. And my brother scratched it.
Oh my
by
God.
accident. And he was furious. He was not a happy camper. I don't know how or what happened after. My parents were just like, if you don't know, he's child. Mistake, sorry. But
listen, it is a mistake, and it was an honest mistake, but at the same time,
it's a Countach.
I also learned very early on, if it doesn't belong to you, don't touch it.
No. But when you're a child, that you're like 4 years old, you don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. Right? That's actually funny. Going back to the comment about the auto show, that's a lot. Some of the guys that would do that, we had all those cars behind ropes, but the amount of people that would go up to maybe the Porsche display, and they know the cars are locked. They go into one car and try and open the door, and it's locked, and then they'd suddenly walk over to a 911 and try jerking the door open. I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. Why are you greasy palming all over this car, just molesting it? Like, it's, even if it was, first of all, if it was your car, you wouldn't do that.
There was guys doing that to the P1 to the Senna GTR or P1
do you
GTR.
walk into your garage and put your hands all over your car?
Right.
It's not natural. You go and open the door. Maybe you touch the car cover when it's covered up.
But
Whatever.
not all people know though. People they'll drive a caravan, and nothing wrong with a caravan.
Right.
But they'll just drive a caravan thinking like, whatever, and they don't know that doing this or just wiping it with a cloth is going to scratch the shit out of the car.
That has nothing to do with that. Right. That is people, their personality, and in fact, if they didn't pay for something, they very rarely have any respect for it.
Right.
And then suddenly you're the bad guy when you're, whoa, hold on a second, don't touch that.
Well, of course. Because it's 2020 and everybody's offended.
By everything, all the time.
Mm-hmm. So what other cars did you encounter?
I had a very, I would call it, fortunate, intimate relationship with that dealership where it was me and at the time was two other guys doing automotive detailing, which is kind of where I cut my teeth in, detailing, but also getting to put my ass in some seats that were super unique and super rare. And not even so much that everything was crazy expensive, but it was just really unique stuff. So on a note about that BMW, those two M3s that I'd never seen anything like that.
I probably will never see again.
I'd never seen even at the BMW dealership when they were up in Waterloo, and they always had pretty cool stuff because they were a big, a high volume BMW dealer.
Right.
And they had that big unique showroom and everything else. And I remember when the E46 M3 came out, we were the first ones that had one. I didn't see one anywhere else except at our dealership. And that we were not a BMW store. We were just an exotic car, kind of specialty car dealership. And I walked in one day and I said, what the hell is this? It was a brand new E46, kind of weird charcoal gray on that cinnamon interior, 6-speed manual coupe. And same thing. They brought it in for another customer who had since been one of their Corvette customers. And they were like, yeah, whatever, it's just the BMW. Didn't get it. And I was like, all right, cool. Because these guys all grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s when Camaros and 5-liter Mustangs were currency. Yeah. They were, you weren't anybody unless you smoked cigarettes and drove an IROC, which is super cool too. That's kind of I grew up in that environment kind of as well because my cousin was like that. The one who got me diehard into Fords and explained to me why Fords were better than GMs, and they're all the same. But they're it's an interesting place to see and gain some experience at a very young age. So now at 35 years old, I've gotten to see, sit in, drive, experience a lot of stuff that some people have never even heard of. Some people have never seen. Some people you only see on TV or on the internet. And back then, like I said, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook. It wasn't, my experience was that 10 or 15 minutes. And I carried the memory with me for the rest of my life. And that was it. That was the first Ferrari I ever drove. I drove a Ferrari 348. Again, these guys knew it was a Ferrari, but that was kind of it. They were like, yeah, well, whatever. It's a Ferrari. It's unreliable. It's hilarious. It's loud. It's not super uncomfortable. Terrible automobile to drive as an automobile, but as a toy, it was super cool. It was bright red, was a Targa top. That one had some kind of aftermarket exhaust system, so it was screaming loud. And there used to be, actually it's still there, but it's a different brand, on the corner of Weber and University. There used to be like a Sunoco or a Shell. And at the time, it was the closest gas station that had 94 octane fuel. So because of a lot of the stuff that we had to do, we had to put 94, high test or high flow juice, they used to call it,
And you have to drive it down.
So we'd have to drive from where now is across the street from Forbes GM in Waterloo. That's where they used to be.
Right.
So from there,
so it's a solid
it's a couple kilometers,
7 to 10 clicks.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a few kilometers drive, fill it up with gas, and I'd find the most hilarious route back, up in and out of the streets, come back, and not that I was, not to say joyriding, but more so just wanted to spend time in the car. I wasn't abusing it. I wasn't beating the hell out of it because every single one of those cars was a heat score, and I was 17.
And you were a child.
So a child, basically. So it was very common I would get pulled over in Waterloo in a insert XYZ car. Is this your car? Where's the insurance? Where's the ownership? Wow. And it got to a point where if I saw a police officer, I would often just kind of pull over to the side because more often than not, they'd come over. But I learned very quickly too. I was super polite, brought out all the documents, said, here you go. This is the easiest way. And then it got to a point where they all got to know me. Well, now you see a kid driving around in a super expensive car. Oh, that's Daniel. Don't worry about it. He's good. And I never sped. I wasn't a freak show in the car because they're someone else's cars. And they're very expensive, and they're not, I don't need my mother to hear, well, you got this job with this family friend, and then he went out touring around in his car and, wrapped it around a tree. And that's kind of what taught me now, where now I've gotten to drive some incredibly fast machinery. And And people say, what are those like to drive? I'm like, I don't know. I put them in cruise control at 62 kilometers an hour and just cruise back to the shop, because oftentimes I'm dealing with clientele who have either multiple cars or people that are, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm going to the Jays game. Here's the key to my brand new McLaren. I'll see you next week. Great. But that's a car, or cars like those that are, they're a weapon in the wrong hands. So I don't.
Well, you got a step ladder. You got a ladder to those type of cars, like performance wise, because I mean, you can't just go from driving, a regular 3 Series BMW to a McLaren if you hit it big somehow, because that's
a reality
difference.
check.
It's ridiculous. Like, you have to drive, like, you gotta drive a V8 big block, like a Mustang, Camaro or something, and then like a 911, something where the engine moves from the front to the back.
I think the
segue, like, ease into it. But
the most important thing, regardless of what kind of car you're driving, is seat time. Because I've been in very scary situations in a 135 horsepower Mazda Miata that I wouldn't have put myself in a 450 horsepower Dodge Viper. But I've also been in some very scary scenarios in a Dodge Viper where I go, oh my God, why am I in this car? I had a chance to go out years ago with a test driver from Chrysler in a Viper ACR, like circa 2001, 2, and at the time was a brand new car. Didn't tell me that it was a professional instructor that was taking me out in the car out on a racetrack. And
which racetrack is this?
Mosport.
The development track or the big one?
The big one.
Oh,
but this was like, and again, I was more just, oh, hey, he's a friend of the business. He owns a Viper. I'd love to get some seat time in with him. Great. And I was naive, 16, 17, 18, whatever it was. And he gets in the car, and first few seconds was pretty docile. And then by the time I got back, I was like, oh my God, my face was on fire. Like, this guy explained to me the dynamics of the car, where you're going through a corner and you have to, I look at a corner and I go, okay, cool, I can make it there at 70. If I do it at 80, I'm pushing it. This guy goes through that same corner at 130 and goes, okay, next time we'll go a little quicker. And I'm losing my mind going, oh my God. He goes, you have to let the car, do its thing. You have to trust the car. I'm like, cool, I'll trust you. You trust the car, because again, I was young, but even then I learned pretty early on, well, these are pretty dangerous machines if you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to respect it. And a couple times I got into a very heavily modified Celine Mustang, probably 600 rear wheel horsepower at 18 years old. Got in the car in the parking lot at the dealership. And I wasn't trying to show off. I got in the car, fired it up, and my job was to take it down, put gas in it, and drive it back. Before I moved an inch, I dumped the clutch, put the car in a huge donut. Didn't hit anything, thank God, because I was surrounded by other cars. My boss walks over at the time and goes, yeah, it's a little scary, eh? Car stalled in the middle of the parking lot.
But he gets it, though.
Yeah, no, he understood. Knows. Like, he got it, and he kind of, I think he was more so testing me. He's like, if he can make it out of the parking lot, he'll be fine. Otherwise, once you're moving, the car drives like a regular car. Nothing special about it, except that it's got 3 times the power of a regular Mustang of that generation. Super heavy clutch, really difficult to drive. And then I don't know, maybe a month or so later, we sold that car. Had to drive it to downtown Toronto.
Oh.
And on the way back, deliver it to the customer and take another car that he was subsequently trading in. Drove this super high horsepower convertible Celine Speedster to, I don't even remember where, somewhere downtown Toronto, and picked up like a mid-70s Mini Cooper S. Could not have been any more different, but I had more fun in that Mini than I did in the Mustang. The Mustang was cool, but you can never exercise it.
There's a fear factor with
that too. And the minute you go to goad the car, you're dead. Or you're, again, I understood that I was 18. Like, I didn't have the experience. Don't, push it. But in a Mini with 100 horsepower, maybe, you can push it all day long because nothing happens. The car is just, it's moving. It's very light, but it's not that kind of torque and horsepower. Like, it's gonna kill you if you
For me, it was respecting the speed, because I grew up with Japanese cars, and for those you just beat on them, they don't break. They're reliable. You can literally do whatever.
They're not fast enough to get in that kind of trouble with.
Right, but then when I drove, like, it's the first time I actually drove a Porsche, and it was actually a GT3. That's when
Great place to start.
really, really slowed down, because I was Japanese, working at BMW, driving M3s, M5s, but then as soon as I went into a GT3, where I got scared, that's where I'm just like, okay, I gotta slow
dial it back a notch, figure out what I'm doing.
And then from there on out, it was just always gradually like, I gotta get to learn the car, I gotta make sure that it's got a proper set of tires on it, blah blah blah. Like for me, I keep on preaching tires are the most important part of the car, but a lot of people kind of disregard that. So
they've never hit a curb, or they've never spun out, or they've never had a tire save them in a dangerous situation, or they've never driven on high performance tires that they understand maybe what the difference is between the two. It's not even necessarily that they have to be a high performance tire. They have to be a tire suited to that application.
right.
Because there's certain tires I would put on your Honda that I wouldn't put on a 5 Series BMW, or vice versa.
Right.
Right. But they're
Go sticky. Just go sticky if you have a toy. That's all I'm going to say.
It depends what kind of car you're driving, I guess. It makes no difference. But
Yeah. So what are you working on these days? Anything exciting? Always exciting.
the 944 was the most recent project that went up online now. So that is that 89 944 Turbo that's listed on the P-Car market. So that's now an international market that is same business model as Bring a Trailer. That was initially focused on Porsche stuff that is now branched out into a little bit of everything else.
Just like the letter P?
Yes.
Or
So,
PEA?
no, P, like the letter P, CAR market.com. So they've got not as big an audience yet as Bring a Trailer, but I imagine the people bidding or watching or commenting or wasting time on Bring a Trailer are the same people that are doing the same thing on P-Car market, or various other kind of institutions that are now doing the same thing. A few other people have come out with bidding platforms where you can buy and sell cars.
Right.
That seems sort of like a real Porsche enthusiast market, and they're in the US, but they're not that far away. They're in Oyster Bay, New York, or something like that.
That's
so
not bad.
That's kind of a neat spot. And the people were super easy to work with, from first phone call to getting the car live online. I don't think was 24 hours.
Wow.
Like it was very methodical, very well versed in this market, these cars. I've got an excellent photographer that comes and shoots the cars, with exception of some of my crappy cell phone photos that they needed some specific detail photos of that I took after the fact. But Adam Maltainer, my photographer, is an absolute killer with the photos we do, who subsequently makes my work look better. And all the crazy stuff we get to photograph is just, again, really unique opportunities and stuff that we don't necessarily get to see all the time. And because of the client base I'm in, or client base of people that have now sort of more become friends than clients, that are, no problem. We can take the car down to the airport here in Breslau and shoot photos there. Or we can take the car around the corner to the electrical workers building and have photo shoots there, kind of thing, where they understand that, well, if I'm in the car's in good hands. It's not we're not going out and beating the hell out of it. It's just an opportunity.
Well, I see your turnaround times are pretty quick on cars. Like I saw, I'm pretty sure you had a 488 that, it sold before you even posted it.
That car did, and that's a unique corner of the market too, where some of those cars where I'm trying to build into inventory that is more so we acquire those cars because we know we have a customer for it,
right?
Or because we know that even if it's going to be go to the market,
it'll sell well.
It's an excellently specified car that looks nice, shows well, drives well. If someone's looking for something like that, it's going to be a nice example no matter what. And it's not red that everybody else has, which is super cool. But we've had enough red Ferraris. I like stuff that is a little bit off the wall. We just recently sold a 95 Ferrari 355 that was a yellow on black car.
Oh, okay.
We originally acquired that car because it wasn't red.
Oh.
It was a super cool car. It was a nice example. It was a hard top. It was a 6-speed, super low mileage, Canadian market car with 26,000 kilometers on it that came out of a 50-something car collection. So well cared for, well maintained, loved, but not abused because, again, 50-something cars in the garage. No one car got that many miles on it.
Wow.
But every mile I got to put on that car got better and better. We put fresh Michelin tires on it, had the car serviced, went through my program, washing, detailing, prepping, film, ceramic coating, paint correction, and then got the car ready for the
Make it
road.
look new, pretty much.
Yeah, so that and easier to care for. Now the client can take it and enjoy it. Gets rained on, okay, no big deal. It's a Ferrari. It's not going to melt.
Ceramic.
It's a car. It's got ceramic coating on it. It's got film on it. I'm always going to be around. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Go put the miles on the car. Go enjoy it. Go exercise it. Because of all the crazy stuff I've ever gotten to drive, the best examples of any of those cars are the cars that get used regularly. Not so much that they have tons of miles or not the garage queens. The garage queen stuff needs to get, up to running temperature, needs to get driven a couple times a year, needs to get moved around. If
Don't keep a monster in its cage.
If you got 30, 40 cars, okay, I get it. You got 3 cars, 1 car, 2 car, whatever. It doesn't matter now.
Drive it.
That cheesy cliche, tomorrow is not guaranteed. Well, it's not.
No, especially in today's day.
So, someone spent a lot of time and money working on succeeding in their life to be able to afford a car like that. Cool. Go enjoy it. You know, and yeah, that car only got exercised on really nice days. I was very fortunate that I have an excellent relationship with the owner who, you know, him and I probably split 50-50 time in that car. Where
Oh, wow.
he was, you know, he loved the car. He's a big Ferrari guy. And is, you know, I would say big car guy, not just Ferrari guy, but that was his first Ferrari.
Right.
Half the time he wasn't driving it, it was in my care. It was either in the garage or covered up or you know, taken to get service or taken out just because maybe somebody wanted to see the car or taken out to an event. Great. I'm out on vacation. You take the car. You do whatever you're going to do with it. Or I'm out doing X, Y, Z.
Keep it warm.
He knows that, you know, if I'm out in the car, we're not beating it up. We're not, you know, taking it for blasts up and down the 427. It's a beautiful day outside. I don't have time. You go do it. Great. When you're done, give it a bath, bring it back to me, and we'll trade it for another car. Cool.
So you're consistently revolving inventory. Or I mean, that's the name of the game, obviously, but you're acquiring all the assets, if you want to call it that everybody's after, right?
What it is
like 488s could be argued to be the new 458 because everybody now wants one.
I'd say 458s are the sweet spot.
Oh, I know.
They're super cool machines, but
they're the ones that kind of set the bar high for highest naturally aspirated outputting engine in the world, still to this day.
I'll have to fact check. I have no idea.
Well,
I'm
the
not
only
sure.
rean why I know that is because the S2K held that record until the.
Oh, you mean like horsepower per liter kind of thing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right,
horsepower per liter. I think it's 128 per liter.
I have to do the math, but yeah, it's 4.5 liters. I think 562 horsepower or something like that. Maybe more.
I'm not that good at math. I'm just gonna nod and say yes.
Okay. Otherwise, yeah, it's like I said, it's interesting to get into that market. You know, we go through a couple Ferraris and suddenly there's none there. We've got, you know, 4 or 5 different air-cooled 911s or GT3s or 3RSs or now, you know, like that 944 is a super weirdo specific, not a particularly popular car. And then suddenly I post the car online and everybody comes out of the woodwork.
What color is it?
It's Guards red. Oh, so it's the color to have a 944, you know? And it was, you know, I put some cheesy tagline from 16 Candles because the guy in the movie has one and drove it. So I was like, you know what? Some people might appreciate that. But the people who will understand that joke are the people who pined after the car when it was new.
Right.
Well, okay. Well,
and it might speak to them too. It's
Maybe.
like, oh, this is a sign.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Nobody needs one. Nobody needs any of those cars. You don't need that S2000. I don't need my old truck. It doesn't matter. People buy this stuff with their heart, not with their mind.
What truck?
I've got a 95 Ford F-150.
Right, the red one.
Yeah. That I bought from a super, super sweetheart 84-year-old man a couple of years ago that, you know, was the second owner. I'm now the third owner. But the same thing, like I mentioned.
It's a beautiful example, though. Holy.
Like I mentioned about your S2000. Well, now I get a chance to care for this truck. Whether or not I keep it for a year or 5 years or for the rest of my life, I get to be the purveyor of it and enjoy it. And I get a big kick out of it. It's super slow. It's a big old V8, but it's got a stick shift and it sounds cool. And, you know, I had a couple local guys do some work on it and we lowered it and put a huge
Just subtle
unnecessary stereo in it because I wanted to be able to cruise down the 401 with the windows open and my dog in the passenger seat and hear the music.
And just enjoy.
That's all I cared about. Yeah. That's all I cared about. It made no difference. All the other crazy cool stuff is a lot of fun, but I don't necessarily get to do that at my own expense. There's somebody else's toys where I'm never going to exercise in the same way that I will my own car. Well, cool. You know, and I get to bring my dog with me, which is a great time.
Any toys for you in the horizon in the near future?
Not that I can think of specifically, but I wasn't really looking for the truck either.
I mean, you're exposed to so much, though. I guess they're all, I mean, your toys without being yours.
It sort of is where I like I said, I get to be the custodian for some of that stuff where
for like a week.
I've been entrusted with that where people are, you know, whether they're either they're leaving me the car or it's getting service or even oftentimes cars are just getting valeted back and forth to the client. Well, now I've got an apprentice working with me who's a fantastic young man who's kind of learning the ropes and has the same opportunity where I had as a young child.
Full circle.
Yeah. So I kind of I did my best to try and pay it forward because of the nature of the stuff I'm doing.
Right.
It's difficult to just trust anybody, letting them handle, you know, an expensive car. Not even necessarily expensive, a rare car or a car that's maybe delicate or a car that you have to handle differently than you would handle a, you know, whatever year Porsche you can handle with the same hands. But a 3-year-old Ferrari, you have to be really delicate on. Things
break.
Yeah.
And I don't think Ferrari produces parts anymore for the old ones, do they?
They do in certain cases, and a lot of times parts cross over. A lot of times, the oil filter
Right.
for a 1968 whatever is the same for a 1992 or whatever it is. But there's aftermarket guys that do that, and a lot of other guys that have picked up that support. And a lot of manufacturers like BMW, Porsche, Mercedes all have now their own classic center.
Yes.
Where you can go and buy whatever you want for any era Porsche 911. You're absolutely going to pay for it, but that part exists. You need window trim for a 1969 911S. Cool, we've got it.
Yeah, like
it's $1 million and it's going to be 9 weeks to get it.
Yeah, like
but
the
it
Lotus
exists.
Esprit, the windshields, they don't exist. They don't make any anymore. So I have a friend of mine who has one, and he drives around with a cracked windshield. So what he has to do is he has to keep his eye open at junkyards to see if one got scrapped with an intact windshield.
Yeah.
Right. And then it got to the point where somebody's gonna have to fact check this, but Diablo or Countach, one of those two, they don't make headlights for the car anymore. So they actually share parts with
The Nissan 300ZX.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know that. Yeah. Which blew my
I
mind.
didn't play sports as a child. I'm sure you can tell. My life was spent reading car magazines and going to car shows and working at an early age. And
you and me both. I mean, that's a European thing to do.
And then the internet came out. And I was like, cool, I can look at pictures of cars all day.
And now we're getting fact checked by everybody.
Yeah.
Keyboard warriors.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I'll let them do the thing. That's just shut my internet off, shut the Wi-Fi off, and go back to work. I got lots of work to do that'll keep me busy. That isn't arguing with people on the internet.
Yeah.
But sometimes people need a reality check.
Oh yeah.
There's no free rides at the gallery.
Do you have a lot of visitors in your gallery now?
I do now, more so. People are just kind of wanting to learn about the process, and not even so much with the cars that are going up for sale. More so the cars that are getting worked on.
What do you mean process? Like paint correction and then
people that are learning about it. And again, irrespective of what kind of car they have, how many cars they have, what value any one particular car is. I just had a call from my gentleman the other day with I believe it's a 2008 Saab 9.3 convertible. Maybe $20,000 car, but he loves that car in the same way I love my truck and you love your S2000, and he bought it. Was doing a lot of reading about paint correction and ceramic coating, and he's not local. He's somewhere in Burlington, Oakville area.
Oh wow!
Found me through, I think, another mutual client or mutual friend of ours, and had gotten some information. Called me. We spent probably 20 minutes on the phone, kind of describing to him what the process is going to be and what we're going to go through. And he goes, "You know what? I'd love to come down and bring you the car, let you have a look at it. Now that I've gotten some more time, and now we're getting into the winter season." I said, "Well, now we have the ability to leave the car here with me. Great, leave it. If the process takes a month between." Maybe the car needs new tires, we're refinishing the wheels, we're getting a windshield replaced, we're touching up the leather and paint correcting the car.
How do you get it back to him, though, after the month or whatever?
And he'll either come pick it up or we'll put it in an enclosed transport and get it back to him.
Service.
Love it. I've built my business and even my own reputation on having a guy.
Well, it's experience.
Regardless of what it's experience and exposure, seat time and stuff that I've got to do.
It's the experience on the other end, right?
That too.
It's, just knowing that you're taken care of and you don't have to lose sleep over it, as where
he doesn't have to think about it.
Other people are like, where's my shit? What's going on?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Where did I leave it? Can I trust this person? And the flip side is when it is maybe a less crazy or less expensive car, like that Saab, for example. Again, nothing wrong with it. It's a super cool car. I remember driving them when I was growing up. But that car, to him, is his GT3 RS.
Yeah.
And to him is worth whatever it's worth millions to him.
I know.
It makes no difference what the car is actually worth. Now it gets the same white glove treatment as that Ferrari 488 did. Well, now that guy in that car feels and looks like $1 million. And now every time he's going to get in, he's going to touch it and go, you know what, this is kind of cool. And that's what car people are. Yes. That's what I'm aiming for. Not specifically because you have a collection of cars or because you have an expensive car. That stuff is really cool. But where I find my most interesting clientele are people that really, dive deep into why they bought a specific car, what purpose that car serves. I've got another great client in town here who's got a multitude of cars, probably 30 plus cars. His favorite car to drive is the one that he most recently purchased, whichever car that might be, whether it's a $42,000 Mazda Miata or a $500,000 McLaren, whichever one he hasn't spent any seat time in yet, that's the car he wants to drive tomorrow. He'll call me out of the blue and I bought a Camaro. Cool. Why? Well, it's a ZL1 1LE. It's a track weapon.
Oh, the suspension that will pump out kidney stones.
Yeah, it's super cool. He's got a McLaren and a Ferrari 458 and a GT3 RS and one of everything else, but I needed a Camaro, who also has a Shelby GT350R. He's just,
Oof,
he likes
that's
the coolest of the cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
I need it. I didn't have one. I had an opportunity to buy one. I took it. Excellent.
Yeah, why not?
Who's I think just turned 50-ish plus year old man. Took me around in that Camaro back to his house just to drop him off. And I drove the car back to the shop, and he was wheeling that car like he built it. And it was unbelievable. And then I subsequently learned again, he's got quite a bit of experience and some seat time, and has a well-heeled experience on the racetrack in a lot of different kind of stuff.
Which is good.
Which is really neat. So he gave me the car and goes, here you go, give it a shot. I'm like, well, it's kind of raining outside. I'm like,
that car can get scary,
slick tires. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm just going to cruise it back. It was a really fun car to drive. I've got an excellent relationship with a local Ford dealer who's given me some really unique opportunities to drive some pretty cool Mustang stuff that most people don't even know exist, let alone have seen in person, which is pretty cool. And now, other than being a diehard Ford guy too. But
you mentioned a 350R. Am I crazy? And I might offend a lot of people that the 350R could be argued. I mean, I know what they did with the 350R. They were trying to chase the GT3, but the experience you get in the 350R, would you say is better or up to par with the GT3?
It's a very tough comparison to make. They are both extremely well executed versions of the car, or rather of the market space that they occupy. The GT3 is super cool. It's an awesome car. I've driven both versions in a PDK and a manual transmission of the same generation, 991.12, whatever it is. Awesome machine. Does not sound like a 350R. Doesn't have a big V8. But that's where it comes down to personal taste. I'm also not a well enough experienced track driver to probably exercise either of those cars at even 60% of their capabilities.
No, I'm just talking about enjoyment. Like, even if you do take it to the track 2 or 3 times a year, but you're also taking it out on Saturdays, Sundays, Fridays, midnight runs.
One's a Ford and one's a Porsche. That's the difference. The difference is I would probably buy the Ford over the Porsche. However, if I had the money to buy the Porsche too, or if I had the money to buy the Porsche, I probably had the money to buy the Ford as well.
Yeah, I would have both if I could.
It really depends on what your use is for the car, and what you're going to do with it. I've got a client who's got that same GT3 in a manual. It's a track weapon. He has 2 or 3 other Porsches that he drives regularly during the day, during the summertime. That car really only sees track use. But that becomes a really sharp tool for the purpose it was designed for. And that guy would get into a Mustang and go, well, this is really cool, but it's not as nice as my 997, 911. Because he doesn't necessarily get the difference between, he thinks Porsches are the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, after 100,000 kilometers in a Porsche, what's it going to sound like, when you open the door, close it, put the seatbelt on, Is it going to make noise? Is it going to start squeaking? Is it going to start rattling? That depends on how the car was cared for. Because I've seen Fords with 100,000 kilometers on them that are in better shape than Porsches with 50,000 kilometers on them. No, okay.
You can say that about any car.
No, I'm talking about the meticulous guys that take care of their cars. Like, what happens over time, like wear and tear versus just ownership, right? When you're looking at what's a Porsche going to be like after 100K versus the 350R.
A lot of people say that, and a lot of people really make those considerations. And a lot of people don't realize that, guess what? You're not going to have that car in 100,000 kilometers. Or people realize, it's build quality, it's cheap plastic, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. One was $94,000. The other one was $194,000. You're going to have to make some concessions somewhere.
Yeah.
And I get that all the time when people say, Corvette this, Porsche that. Yeah, cool. All right. A Corvette does everything that car is going to do for half the cost. I don't care about the stitching in the seat that you paid $3,500 extra for, that you're going to tell me the car is better because of the stitching. It isn't. It's a super cool machine. It does exactly what it's designed to do. There's a certain point where it stops being about the car and its capabilities and more so about braking rights.
I think it's, for me, it would be analog versus electronics, right? I think that arguably the 350R is probably the last analog car we're going to see. Handbrake, stick, just normal dumbed down stuff, other than if you buy a brand new Lotus, right? You look at new cars, it's just...
Do you know anybody? How old are you?
Turning 30.
Do you know, in 30 years of your life, have you ever met a single person who has purchased a brand new Lotus?
Yes. One.
One guy hold on.
One person.
Who bought the car brand new?
Yes.
What kind of car? Excuse me, what kind of Lotus?
It's a Evora. It's a brand new Lotus Evora with, it's like almost like a baby blue with like orange.
When would he have purchased that car? What year would that be? 14? 13?
No, this year.
Oh, really?
This year. Yeah. And it's surprising that it's actually this year.
One, it's surprising that it's this year. Two, surprising that he spent however much money that was on a I would say 140, maybe.
Yeah.
And didn't buy a pre-owned GT3.
He had them. He experienced it. And he actually likes the Evora more than the GT3, which is interesting.
Do you know why that is? Because he's already paid for it. And now he can't say anything bad about it.
No. Actually, I drove it. I drove it. It's actually
the best looking Toyota Camry you can ever buy.
With a supercharger.
Yeah. The build quality in a Lotus is hilarious.
I mean, it's British mixed with Japanese.
And then you want to have the conversation about Mustang versus Porsche build quality. In 100,000 kilometers, you will be able to have the conversation and line those two cars up next to each other, the Mustang and the Porsche. In 100,000 kilometers, that Lotus will be in the garbage.
Yeah. I mean,
the motor won't.
The rest
of the car will be.
I was just going to say the motor, I don't know. But I mean, even like it's little finicky stuff. Like you can't open your gas cap. It's weird. It's brand new. When we try to open the gas cap, you push a little button and it goes, bzz, doesn't want to do it. Right. So it's little finicky things like that the British guys, but it's also British where that's, I mean, anything
McLaren doesn't do that. I mean, it's three times the price, but you're going to tell me I can't put gas in the car because I spent less money.
No, but, you know, McLaren's has its flaws too, right? They're not the most reliable and yada, yada. But a lot of people are saying it's like an ownership of a Tesla where, you know, you have a McLaren and as much as you love it, you're going to hate it just because if it's unreliable, it's easy to fix because you just drop the engine. That's how you do an oil change. I don't know if you know that, but you just lift up the car, you drop the engine on McLaren, you do a few things because the engine sits very, very, very low in the rear of the car, right? So apparently doing repairs on it is super, super easy for the. I
have to fact check that too, but I don't know. I'm not a McLaren technician.
But no, it's fun. But no, the Evora that's a cool car. I always wanted it at least.
It's a very good looking car. I will give it. And Lotus has always been a, like, you see one out of a car you don't see often out in the wild, but you see. I've got a client of mine who's going to know the story as soon as I tell it, but he's got a yellow Lotus Exige. I think it's a 220 or 240.
I think I met him.
That's again lightly modified car too. Hilarious car to drive. Awesome. Tons of power, no weight. Thing makes this screaming loud noise.
And that's the one I want.
Weighs absolutely nothing. Probably $100,000 car built by a drunk Englishman on a Tuesday that I don't think the right and left side of the car have two matching bolts. Nowhere.
Really?
That car is an absolute. You get underneath that car and you go, all right, Russian roulette. We'll figure it out. Maybe we will complete the task today. Maybe we light this car on fire. Maybe we don't know.
But I don't know. I just find that there's something
with a Toyota motor.
I love it. It's just a Frankenstein, and I love it. It's just a whole bunch of crap put together, and it just works.
I like it too.
It just works.
And not to say that any of those things deter me from enjoying the car.
Right.
There would be a lot of other cars I would put on my list to spend any kind of money on before that car. However, it's also very difficult to argue when you take the roof out and you get it out on the road and go, man, this car is really light and really fast.
But my point being of the whole story is like it's very, very hard to find an analog car today. Like usually it's going to be auto, dual clutch, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I'm talking about handbrake and stick. Try finding one. You're looking at a brand new Subaru. You're probably looking at a Miata. And I think that's it. Like everything is like at least electronic handbrake. You can still find a manual here and there. But
I spent some seat time in a brand new Civic Type R.
That is a gangster car.
It's a pretty cool car.
A lot of people hate it because of the way it looks, which is, I mean, it's the rear, but
I will say it's not even that I hate the way it looks. It's just very busy.
Oh yeah,
there's just so much going on.
Just because like all new BMWs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A new like a Civic Si. Very pretty. Great looking car. Should have built the Type R out of that. But I get it. Type R customers want something that looks ridiculous. Cool. I need 17 wings and 9 diffusers
and a park bench
just to make this car go down the road. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. But man, is it ever fun to drive.
Oh yeah.
A lot
it's
of power.
The fun aspect.
Super cool, comfy seats. That being said, in that price bracket, when you're comparing to a Golf R or a Subaru and it isn't all-wheel drive, suddenly discounts the car and go, oh my God, how much is this car? It's $50,000.
Front-wheel
drive. Yeah.
Wrong wheel drive?
Yeah, it's not a. There's nothing wrong with a front wheel drive car when it's $22,000. You know, I had a Fiat 500 at Barth.
Fun cars.
Loved that car with every fiber of my being because it was hilarious. Not because it wasn't fast. It was fast for what it was because it weighed 2,500 pounds maybe with me in it. But sticky tires, lowered suspension, and that car, I wouldn't have to slow down in that car. I could do 100 down a regular road and not slow down for the roundabout because I'm like, well, let Jesus take the wheel and we'll figure it out. It'll make it. Don't worry about it. It'll get through
But
there.
the fun thing is you can actually push that car to its limits and still
I can exercise
enjoy
110% of its 167 horsepower, whatever it was, which is awesome.
But redlining second gear in a GT3 is like jail time.
Yeah, I'm losing my license. Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot of fun to drive a slow car quickly. Driving stuff like that or some of those crazy weapons we get to drive is like, oh, it's cool, but oh man, is it ever dangerous? I've had some seat time recently in a new Shelby GT500, 2020, 760 horsepower.
That's interesting. Okay.
The
I have
car
a question for you then, but go
is
on.
an absolute weapon. And I can't even give you an honest opinion about what the car is like because I've maybe made it to fourth gear. And even then I was really just nursing it because in second and third, you're smoking the tires. There's no, again, I'm not a good enough driver to maybe exercise that car. Also wasn't my car and I wasn't on a racetrack. So I wasn't
Beautiful car though.
beating it senselessly, but it was,
The way you open the hood. Oh,
yeah, it's pretty cool. With the two little push pins and whatnot. It's
now GT350R or GT500.
350R. Yeah. Hands down.
Okay.
Hands down. It's the 500 is super cool. And maybe if I had an opportunity to exercise the car, maybe more so for what it was built like. Not to say that it isn't a great machine, but the 350R, again, you can use more of it more of the time. And I don't care what anybody says about how much power any one particular car has. The sweet spot is probably 500 horsepower. Manual transmission would be my go-to, but even in a PDK GT3 is a very cool car to drive, or BMW, whatever it is. 500 horsepower is usable. And
still gets you in trouble, but still
a
gives
ton
you
of
a lot
fun,
of fun. Yeah.
where you get into that Shelby and it's a really, it's a ground pounder. It's a cool machine, but it's, same like that Corvette ZR1. Awesome car, but you really have to be on a racetrack to get anywhere near that car's potential.
Yeah, but you know what? I think the Americans could have done so much more with that car. They're like, I'm gonna reference Matt Farah. He hit the nail on the head with this one, where the Americans are so focused on what the brochure is gonna say that they sacrifice other things. Like they were having issues with the ZR1 beating the Z06 0 to 60 to the point where they sacrificed handling to get it just a little bit quicker, just so you can pay that extra amount, just to say, hey.
You know who reads those facts?
North Americans.
Guys that are nowhere near able to exercise those cars' capabilities.
Oh, of course.
That doesn't matter whatsoever.
No, but that's the thing. It's
you're buying a ZR1. First of all, buying a ZR1, most guys are never even going to see a racetrack with it. And then when they do, if they do,
that's true.
Typically, they're guys who have had some seat time in it. They're going to get to exercise the car. They'll tell you the difference. I know one of those guys, two of those guys, maybe. That's it. Everybody else is bragging rights. They just want the coolest thing out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But don't give me track figures about how fast the car goes around the Nürburgring
when you've never hit a track.
When you can't spell Nürburgring. I don't want to hear it.
Or Nordschleife.
I don't care. I don't care how fast the car goes around the Nürburgring. I don't care how fast any one particular trait the car has. It makes no difference. You're driving it in Kitchener. You're driving it in Waterloo, Toronto, whatever. You're going up and down the 401 where there's traffic 80% of the time. Speaking
of Nürburgring, did you hear the car that topped the list?
No.
The GTR Black Series. The AMG GTR Black.
For the next 20 minutes until somebody else comes out with something faster.
Yeah, I mean, the GT2 had it for the longest time, though.
Was it a GT2 or was it that Aventador SVJ?
No, you're right. The SVJ. The SVJ had it. The GT2 prior to that.
Again, I don't know anybody who owns an Aventador or an Aventador SVJ that can get even to 40% of that car's capabilities. So when they
let
come
alone
at me
track it,
and quote Nürburgring figures. And here's the other thing I'm going to tell you that nobody thinks about, or maybe they think about, will never admit. Who I heard from a client of mine again, who's got one of everything, who buys that Camaro and the Shelby and whatever else to go around the racetrack with, and has a track prep GT3 RS. who has tracked his 458 and his McLaren 720. And he goes, Daniel, I don't care how much money you have. When you're going at a corner in a Shelby 350R, you are aiming to get 10/10s out of the car. When you are going at a corner in a McLaren 720, all you can think about is $500,000. And the wall, I'm doing my best not to hit. You spin out on a track in a Mustang or a Camaro or a Corvette, and that's racing. You spin out in a McLaren and hit a wall, that's a 6 o'clock news story. You are all over Facebook and Instagram, and no one cares. They're just all they look at and go, "Oh, rich guy can't drive the car." Didn't think that maybe he hit some grass, maybe he hit some sand, whatever else it was. Every experience is different.
Well, I was going to say that because the SVJ, if you take it to like Cayuga on open lap day, because I've taken the S2 on open lap. I've never been on open lapping. It was always at private events where I take the S2, or I mean the 1 Series, whatever I had at the time, and it was pretty much open. I can wide open throttle all the time, just go full send all the time. But then my first time going open lapping was this year in the S2, just to kind of like see what the car will need, right? Has the shitty some kind of tires, don't know. So I know I need new tires, but when I took it out, I just see there's guys that are just like trying so hard for no reason, not having fun, just trying hard to show that they can try and oversteer an STI. That's okay.
They'll get a reality check soon enough.
But the thing is, I don't want them to have a reality check into
near
me,
you,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So taking an SVJ on something like that, that's all I think about is But bye-bye.
But again, somebody with something like that is going to, maybe do it once, twice, go for a quick lap and get their fun out of it, and then go take their other actual track car out onto the track.
Yeah.
I took my truck around Cayuga.
Really?
Yeah.
That's probably a blast.
That's the level to which I was like, all right, cool, I'm comfortable with this, because at the same track day, I had a Shelby 350R, a GT3 RS, YSAC pack car, and the
1M. Was that the one day that you had?
No,
or that was a different day.
That was around the same time, but we sold that 1M so quick that I didn't have time to take it to the racetrack. But
yeah, probably my favorite BMW too. Love that car.
I could have taken either one of those vehicles out. I was like, nah, I'm going to take my truck out. I'm like, this is cool. I'm like, I know that I'm not going to be able to exercise the GT3 RS anywhere near its capabilities. The Shelby, I've had quite a bit of seat time with, so I kind of knew what I was dealing with there. It was super cool, but I've done it before. I was like, when am I ever going to get to take my truck out on a racetrack on an open day where no one's around me and no one's chasing me, going to get near me? And like it or not, however much value it doesn't have, I'm not going to be able to replace it if I put it in the wall. So I'm just going to cruise at 60% and go around the racetrack, and that's it. But you'll get those guys at any day, guys that are just massive egos that are, I bought an XYZ and it's the coolest thing ever. But
there's something satisfying about taking your own car, whatever it is.
Totally.
Whether it's a little, $1,000 car or whatever, right?
Because you can drive the nuts off and not feel bad. Doesn't matter.
And it's also something that you can say, I took this thing out on the track. Like, really? A red Chevy truck from the 90s?
Yeah. I got photos of it. The photographer took. It's me cranking the one corner, and it's so funny because it looks hilarious visually speaking. Like, I'm probably doing 30. Like, I'm not roasting the tires, and it's not like, well, whatever. I just wanted, we set it up, but we put like drag shocks in it and kind of set the car up and lowered it a little bit. So I'm like, it's got really nice tires on it. So I'm like, I'll give it a shot and see what happens.
The craziest thing I've seen on the track was a Baja vehicle, with like one of those like off-roading, like the secure racing like buggies that go on 3 wheels when you take it on a corner fast.
Yeah.
I saw that this year and I was just blown away. Did not ever think of seeing that. I mean,
I'd love to be in the passenger seat of one of those for a couple laps, and I go, okay, cool. Now
I've been in the passenger seat of an Ariel Atom. Probably the most terrifying experience of my life on a racetrack.
That was pretty cool. Where was that?
Cayuga.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I got to drive it as well, and I'm just like, no, 1 lap, like not even a full lap. I started, and I'm just like, yep, nope. Mm-mm.
So funny you say about being in a passenger seat. I had a chance. I was probably 21, 22. I didn't drive it, but I had a customer of mine when I worked at this tire shop who had I want to say like late 60s, early 70s Lotus race car. It's called the Lotus 23. I want to say it's 69, maybe 68, something like that.
Lotus 23.
Lotus 23.
What
British
is
racing
it?
green, bright yellow wheels.
That's
like
the color to get.
Just it was a tin can. It was a weapon. Probably 2 liters, maybe twin cam, 4-cylinder. It didn't.
Oh, damn.
The green one in the first picture or the third picture.
Oh, wow.
That's exactly what it looked like.
That So it looks like a Le Mans car, like a really old Le Mans car from like the 50s.
Yeah, it was legit, or 62, 63. Yeah. So anyways,
okay, yeah.
That generation. But I got in the passenger seat. You're laying down in it. The seat is kind of like two really nicely cushioned phone books. You're sitting in there and going, okay, maybe we'll, it doesn't look that fast. It's a racing car, but you think, well, any series this thing races in, they're all going to be the same kind of slow. We got out onto EB Crest Road out here in Breslau, and the guy went around a transport truck when I thought, oh my God, we don't have enough room for this. And the first thing that's going to go into the truck is going to be me.
Wait, you can drive this thing on the road?
Yeah, it's a street legal car.
What?
The guy drove it to the shop. We put new tires on it. Little 13-inch magnesium racing wheels. That's exactly what it looked like. Except his was...
red on the ends. British Racing Green on red. And you might think it doesn't work, but
left-hand drive. So we get in the car, and again, not really tearing it. I didn't think he was going to, really give her. And we get out to go around a truck, and I thought, oh my God, this car is not anywhere near fast enough because he's been nursing it the whole time. Well, we get out, and he hammers it. This car weighs 1,500 pounds maybe with us in it. Like, it's a super light car.
1.6 liter.
I don't know, 200 horsepower maybe, something like that.
It's a 1.6.
Don't quote me, but it was a, again, full-on racing car.
Well, if it weighs nothing, obviously.
We tore around this truck and made, because there was oncoming traffic, we tore it around, made it around the other car, and I was losing it because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this gigantic bathtub just went around this transport truck. But it was awesome. It was super cool.
The VIN consists of 3 numbers and 1 letter.
Yeah.
That's gangster.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting
now,
machine.
Are these the Lotuses when they first came out? They started falling apart in the sun, in like the California sun type of thing.
I think you could say that about any Lotus, but that's not that particular. I want to say that's a.
So this car was entered out of Le Mans with a 750cc engine as a quasi-factory entry with drivers. Interesting. Wow.
And I have a feeling the car the gentleman had that came to my shop at the time. I mean, now that I think about it, I'm not really sure it was street legal or not, but it had license plates on it, so who knows? But
it does not look street legal. It looks like, I mean,
we put racing slicks on it. Like at the time were Toyo, R888s or T1Rs or whatever they were. They were not,
Lotus
all seasons.
23. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a neat experience, that's for sure. But yeah, see what I mean? It's just weird stuff that I get. I've been around and been near my entire life.
Have you ever detailed something that's just like almost just god awful, where it's just like, oh wow, like either
god awful as in disgustingly dirty, or god awful as in the car, or
either that or like a track GT3 cup car type of thing where it's just like mangled, and you're like,
I've done a few track cars, but the way I approach those cars is not the same way I approach that low mileage Ferrari 355. That I know when the day is done, that 355 is going to be
back out.
Something that this person is proud of, and the pride is in the ownership, in the way that it's getting enjoyed, it's clean, we condition the leather, we polish the car. You're creating something out of that. The track car, I'm cleaning it to get the track gunk off of it, to then send it back out to the racetrack and do the same thing.
Wow.
So in my mind, I'm not thinking about, does this particular piece have to be as clean as it's ever going to be because it's going to be dirty again in 24 hours? Right. Well, that's how I approach that. And then there's other cars that are kind of halfway in between hybrids, guys that buy, modern GT3s that take them out on the track. Cool. We have programs for that. We film, coating, track spray, all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
So it's interesting. It's the track stuff that guys really beat on are really just purpose-built toys. They're super cool, but they don't smell nice inside. They don't look good. They don't have AC. They're not designed to do that kind of thing. They are stripped out track weapons with fire suppression systems and harnesses and FIA approved seats and no windows and that kind of stuff. Stuff's super cool, but it's just different.
Wow. What about gross cars?
I won't name the dealer, but there's a local German car dealer that brought me a bunch of cars. But the very first car they brought me was probably top 5 most disgusting cars I've ever detailed in my entire life. And it wasn't because it was really particularly dirty. And the funniest part was the car was like, it was a used, 2-3-year-old BMW with like 40K on it. It wasn't an old rat.
So it's probably a trade-in that they're just like, we don't want to touch this.
Yeah, it was a trade. And that's exactly what they told me. But I thought, okay, whatever, it's dirty. I've been cleaning cars for so long. How bad can it possibly be? It's not so much that it was really dirty. There was like whole unpeeled oranges and bananas under the passenger seat, and similarly in the trunk. And then I thought to myself, who is leaving this stuff here? probably 3 or 4 oranges, 2, 3 bananas, a couple apples, like under the sea, among the,
That have changed color.
and brushes and gummy bears and crap that you normally find in salt stains, whatever else that you normally get in a dirty car on top of all this. And I thought, oh my God, weird. Like, why is this person so disgusting? But I gave them back a spotless car and they were thrilled with it. And that was kind of in the infancy in my business, where I was doing a lot of lease return stuff, dealership detail work, which was, again, very happy
you got to
do
grow
it.
your business somehow, right?
Yeah, no, I have no issue doing that. And some people, to that note about my business, will see my business or hear about what I do and go, oh, I don't know if my car's fancy enough. I'm like, no, that doesn't matter. I'm like, your business is no different than anybody else. And 1 car, 10 car, 20 cars, whatever, it makes no difference. A clean car is always nice. Whether I'm grinding salt stains out of a Mazda 3 or detailing a, one of whatever number Ferrari, Porsche, whatever it is, everyone is just as happy when they come to pick the car up. You brought me a gross minivan and now you're picking it up and now it's spotless. Cool.
It's the experience.
They're just as excited.
Just the experience.
Not to mention, you drive a Honda Odyssey out of a showroom now that's got it sitting next to a McLaren and a brand new Corvette. People go, oh, cool. It's interesting to see. That's something I learned from my old boss, my first job. Somebody would call and say, we're coming over to look at a 1998 Cadillac DTS. And we would polish it and park it in the showroom next to a Ferrari, next to a Rolls Royce, next to a 57 Chevy, lined up next to a bunch of Corvettes and Vipers and whatever else. It's part of the experience. People come in to look at that car and go, yeah, I could have bought one anywhere else or could have bought it online or at the time, in the Auto Trader, whatever else. But you're walking in there and now it's, someone brings you a coffee and the place is nice and clean. There's 25 cars in the showroom that's really meant for 10 cars, and they're just jammed in there. And the other thing they did was they surrounded all the walls in that showroom were covered in mirrors. So you walk into that showroom with 10 or 20 cars in there and it looks like there's 50 cars in there. Right. Which was just hilarious. And then people get in, they see that experience and now you're getting the same white glove that buddy bought the Rolls Royce with and they go, oh, cool.
Well, I remember when I went into your shop, you were just working on a 720 and then when I came back the next day, because you were finishing up on the 720, just finishing touches. The next day, you were working on like a Dodge Neon. Was it the AC?
I know exactly what car you're talking about. That's an ACR Srt4 Neon.
Which I've never known existed.
Very few cars ever made. That was a black on black leather and cloth car, which was super rare to begin with.
It had Dodge Viper seats.
All the SRT4s did. Had the
Viper seats and I think E85 gauge as well.
No, it was a boost gauge.
Boost gauge.
Boost gauge and all factory options. So completely bone stock car with 16,000 kilometers on it. And it was rare. Yeah. I've driven, seen, and detailed more McLaren 720s than I have 2005 SRT4 ACR Neons.
Even online, you can't find them. Because I tried looking it up. You just can't find it.
There's just not that many of them. And the ACR specifically was pretty tough to find. And an SRT4 in any state that wasn't molested, abused, has 250,000 kilometers on it, and is in a total rust bucket is a pretty difficult car to find. So to that customer, that car is
a unicorn.
His S2000, is his GT3, is his BMW 1M. It's a car you can't duplicate anymore. They're not making any more of them. There's no such thing as a used car factory. And you find stuff that it's unique. It's rare. You're not going to trip over it all the time.
I used to tell customers, there's no such, we don't have a used car factory. Oh, I want it in black. I'll call you if I get one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up with that BMW 1M. That was just a super low mileage,
The Valencia orange?
Yeah. With 3,000 kilometers, something like that. And that car, I think, spent 15 minutes online before somebody called me. It was like, no, cool, we'll take it.
I tried to buy that car off of that customer. I think this was probably 4 years ago. And the guy was like, nope. I'm waiting for the M2CS to come out.
That was a different one. The car you're thinking of, I had 2 of them at one point.
Oh, because I know he traded it in at the BMW store, and then one of our mutual friends
bought it. So the car you're thinking of had 89,000 kilometers on it.
I think so.
I had a second one that nobody knew about because I didn't want to dilute the market with 2 identical cars. I had a second one with 22,000 kilometers on it.
Not the same car, though.
They were both Valencia orange.
One's 20-something thousand.
No, that's what I'm getting at. So 20-something thousand kilometers. That's the car that ended up going up online and
just done.
Yeah. And coincidentally, the person who bought it was someone who I had done business with before and someone who had purchased a couple cars from me. And it was another dealer that bought the car that was like, we have a customer for this car we need. And no squabbling about the price.
Of course.
Nothing. I'll take it. Cool.
More than 6 figures?
No, it wasn't 6 figures.
Really?
Those cars aren't 6 figures yet, but they're
gonna get there. I mean,
they're
like
expensive.
20,000 kilometers.
They were expensive.
That's a blue chip car.
But the guy who bought the car knew that.
Mm-hmm.
The guy the dealership knew that. The customer buying the car came with him to pick up the car. To the point where they didn't want to pick the car up the day that we had scheduled because it was really windy outside and he didn't want to have the car like pelted with sand and stone chips and whatever else. And subsequently ended up dying down the rest of the day. And he's like, yeah, no, we're going to come out. We're super excited for the car. Had the original tires on it. Had like, he was, and he's a bit of a, not specifically a BMW guy, more so like I would say kind of like dialed in, like he's got 5 or 6 cool BMWs,
but there's
5
specific.
or 6 cool like muscle cars, but they're all, he's got a clown shoe M coupe.
Wow.
He's got the same car in an M Roadster.
Wow.
Both the same color.
Wow.
Then the 1M, and I think I want to say E36 M3 convertible, like just kind of really specific stuff. Not particularly that any one car is a ton of money or not.
To some, all 5 of those would be considered oddballs.
Yeah, and that same guy bought what year would that have been? 2018 Lexus LC 500 from me, where it's a completely different car altogether.
Yeah.
But he's a 70-something-year-old man. He goes, no, I like driving this thing. He goes, this is the car I spend the most time in. The other cars are really just collector pieces that we go for a little cruise in.
Wow.
So, that's awesome. I appreciate that. I like that he's got an eye for stuff that isn't just, well, it's cool because it's a Ferrari. Or it's cool if it's a Corvette, it's a Z06 or it's a ZR1 or it's a Shelby Mustang. No, there's lots of other stuff out there that is, sometimes people just like to have like your S2000 or a Mazda Miata or something that's, to somebody else, they look at that and go, yeah, it's just a Honda convertible. What's a big deal?
No, I get that.
But I see one and I'm like, no, I get it. I get why guys like them, why they buy them, why they're, why they're going up in value, why they're few and far between that are unmolested cars.
Well, when the new Lambo came out, the Urus, I just couldn't do, I mean, personal preference again, but I just couldn't do it. And I was getting a tour of a private garage. And when they're like, yeah, this just came out and we already sold it, yada, yada, yada. And I walked right by it, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's an E92 M3 competition. And the guy's looking at me like I have 3 heads. Like, what are you doing? Nobody sees this. Yeah. But I'm like, but I like that.
Yeah, but in a year from now, these are going to be everywhere, and you're not going to see that E92 anymore.
No,
they're
dying down. But I mean, there's a lot of guys that still have them, right? They're enjoyed a lot, and yeah, it's
again, those are cars that are like your S2000. Find an unmodified one with less than 1 million miles on it that hasn't been abused by somebody or everybody. And, there are people appreciate it. If you like something, chances are there's another group of people who also like it. My people laugh all the time when I tell them my first car was a Fiat X19, which most people don't even know what that is. And then they look at it and go, okay, cool. Like it's 67 horsepower. And I get it. But every time I see one or hear about one or see one for sale on Kijiji, I'm always like,
rewind.
Should I do this again? There's the most recent one that I had, was the second time I owned that particular car.
Oh, you owned it twice?
I owned the same car. And I've done that a couple times in my life where I bought the same car I owned back a second time. Now, that wasn't my first one,
right?
But it was one that I bought when I was probably 23. Sold it pretty quickly after because somebody offered me 3 times of what I paid for it. And at the time, that was a lot of money for a 23-year-old kid. And then sold it to the guy and said, well, if you're ever interested in selling it again, or excuse me, I said, if you ever sell the car, please let me know first.
Yeah.
Subsequently, I learned that shortly after I was opening my business, he got in touch with me. Hey, we're thinking of selling the car and blah, blah, blah. And credit to her, my ex-girlfriend at the time had purchased the car for me. And it was like, hey, listen, I know you like this car. And we came up with a kind of an agreeable amount. And the guy was like, it wasn't 10 times more than he paid for it. It was just like, hey, listen, this is kind of what I got into it. If I can get that back out of it, I'm like, cool. Bought the car and sat in my showroom for 4 or 5 years. Until I bought my first vintage Ford pickup truck, and then second one rather, and then start, spending money on that thing and thought, well, I'm probably going to put this thing together. And it needed a clutch, a little bit of TLC, sent it out to go get the clutch done. In the middle of all that, someone on Kijiji put, hey, looking for a Fiat X19. So I reached out to the guy. I'm like, hey, here's one that's lived inside its whole life. It's not a rust bucket. It was very well maintained, very well cared for. By the way, it's getting a new clutch, new fuel lines, new whatever, and you can have all of that for X dollars. The guy came and saw the car at Buddy's shop in Guelph in pieces with the transmission out of it, covered in dirt. And he's like, yeah, no, I'll take it. It's like, cool. He knew what he wanted.
Wow.
He knew it wasn't a rusty bucket, and that was it. and subsequently started my obsession with old Ford trucks.
Yeah, you know what? If I can go back and buy some of the cars that I used to have, I would. Like, I'm a sucker for RSXs. I love them.
Those are cool cars.
I mean, and you know what? I know we're running out of time, but that's one thing that has trailed very far off is analog gauges, like white clusters.
And you know what? They weren't white. They were silver in an RSX with orange lights.
They were no, mine was white. I don't.
Somebody might have done that after the fact because I'm pretty confident. Well,
I'll
have to fact check that.
Mine was not a Type S, so maybe the Type S was, but mine was white.
You might be right. So maybe a Type S was,
Maybe.
but I'm pretty confident they were all, at least maybe the non-Type S cars,
Yeah,
were like a silver face with orange. You might
or like a
look it up.
B4 S4. That's a gangster cluster.
B5.
B5, sorry.
B5, yeah.
B5 S4.
B5 S4. I had one of those for 15 minutes and got rid of it because I was like, oh my God.
Check engine light?
How many? No, actually, the car, I bought the car with, I bought it on the predicate that it had low mileage, which it did. But because it had low mileage, it was due for every single service it ever needed. Yeah, see, it's silver.
Yeah, for me, that's white.
Well, I get it. It looks white, but in reality,
Okay,
it's
I see
silver.
what you mean. Yeah.
It lights up orange.
Yes. But it's...
Cool car, though.
I love it. But a white cluster or silver cluster, whatever, you can't...
Yeah,
you just don't
it was
find
neat.
that.
It was different. And it was analog. And it was...
Fully, like there's no traction
manual
button.
transmission.
Yeah.
Front-wheel drive, 210 horsepower, I think, was the Type S, and 180 something was the premium or the whatever the non-Type S was.
Yeah. That's fine. I wish I had the Type S, but...
Was a great looking car, too.
I still think it is.
Was like I think it aged well. But again, when was the last time you saw one of those? That
was decent.
Well, either that or that wasn't in pieces that someone was turning into a Civic.
Right.
They were taking the engine out of and putting it into a Civic. That was what we all did back then. You know, I've owned a bunch of cars, and I started buying them early on. I've probably had 60 to 70 of my own cars.
Jesus.
And most of them, a lot of them are just cars you had when you were young. But a Mark II Jetta will always have a soft spot in my heart.
Yeah.
Volkswagen Scirocco 16 valve that I had a bunch of those, and one of them was a real cherry that I actually owned that one twice, and then sold it and bought an even nicer one that I owned for a few months before. I was like, oh, cool, sell this thing off. Those were super fun cars.
Yeah, but looking back, can you imagine you had all of those still to this day?
I almost bought a Scirocco a couple months ago. That kind of happens sometimes.
Oh, really?
That a Fiat X19 is always soft spot. I had you're gonna laugh, but I had a Volkswagen Cabrio that was just a hilarious car with a big turbo motor in it that my homeboys over at Foreign Automotive built for me. That was just that car was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Again, it was not, and I was gonna make that comment when we started talking about your Honda, was that you get the real diehards and internet warriors that, well, I would have bought the hard top. Why wouldn't you buy a Mark IV Golf? I'm like, yeah, no, everybody had one of those. I get it. I know what it is. Mm-hmm. A car that I'm gonna buy for the same reason that I would use your Honda or that Cabrio or whatever it was, is I'm going to buy in a convertible because I'm only going to drive it. That S2000 was a convertible only. I can't stand when guys put a hardtop on an S2000. That might just be the very cheesiest thing I've ever seen.
It does look good though. I
must say. It looks fantastic.
But it defeats the purpose of a convertible.
But 100%. You buy a Honda Civic. I know, I don't care that it's rear wheel drive and blah, 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 whatever. But if I'm going to buy a car specifically to have a laugh in it, then yeah. If I would buy, obviously the price difference is different, but I'd buy a 911 Speedster before I bought a GT3 if they were the same money.
Well, the cool thing about the S2 is that's one of very few cars that you actually have to drive on the track with the top down. Yeah. Because if it's a hard top, gotta go up. If it's a soft top, some are required by law to have a roll cage, but not the S2 because of how it's
how it was built and whatever else. Yeah. That's pretty cool actually. But they're it's a bag of fun, and you're only going to drive it on a nice day, and you're only going to drive it for a couple hours. Yeah, I'd rather put the top down. Yeah. Any of those new cars, a McLaren, a Ferrari, whatever, Lamborghini, I'd sooner have in the convertible version because they're all those kind of cars anyways. They're a good time. That's all it is, right? Yeah.
Well, we are out of time.
All good.
Soon-ish. But if there's anything you'd like to plug or say, you are more than welcome.
You know what? Actually, now that I think about that, I'm gonna tell people soon enough. After 6 years in business, I've got a really talented young guy who's building me a website. So then you'll be able to see a little bit deeper into what I'm doing and some of the work I've done. A place to consolidate.
Nice.
Some videography work, some really nice photography work, and a little bit of the menu of kind of what I tend to offer at the Dragas Auto Gallery.
Any friends? Shout out to your homeboys.
Not a single one. I'll wait till they come on here too. No, I'm kidding. There's quite a few guys, probably a ton to list, but I would say even the guys at the magazine, at Auto Strada Forum, the guys at Foreign Automotive who've been a constant supporter ever since I've opened, the photographer Adam, who's an absolute killer, Sean, who's building my website, and the most instrumental part of my 2020 season is a young man named Parker, who is now my apprentice, who is absolutely killing it, following me around and learning and trying to put up with my nonsense and trying to figure out, kind of what my mind works like, where I can't have a list and I can't write anything down and I'm just all over the map. He's done a fantastic job turning my business into what it is today. So it's been super nice to give another young man an opportunity, and somebody who's not just there to take Instagram photos.
To relive your
that too, and to gain some experience. He's young, hungry, very respectful, and I appreciate that he appreciates what we're doing. He's not just there to screw around, which I like.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah. But anyways, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming,
the
man.
invite.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Have you back.